What's up guys, my name is Josh and today we're going to be talking about the ZMF BLACKWOOD. We're going to talk about this headphone here and of course we're going to start off like always with build quality. So the build quality is pretty great. I have to admit, I do like these pilot pads. They do add a fair bit of weight to an already heavy headphone though, and weight is just about the only complaint I have about this actual headphone. The pilot pad is definitely more comfortable than the stock headband that they have on here. The pads are amazing. I mean, you're really getting that ZMF quality. The wood cups are beautiful, and I'm really digging the balance connector here. Now, overall, it's definitely a more comfortable headphone. There are a couple weird things that could be specific to my model, but I can't confirm because I don't have another one to test. It's a little loose in terms of the seal at the bottom here, and it's a lot higher pressure up at the top. And so I would have preferred a little bit more clamp force, but that's not necessarily something that ZMF can control. And if you had a bigger head than mine, that probably wouldn't be an issue. But other than that, they're comfortable, if not a bit heavy. So like almost all T50 mods, these do require quite a bit of power. I was powering this off of the THX 789. So sound quality, I really like these. They are properly detailed. Respectable but not overdone bass, and really crisp treble with a decent amount of mid-range. And for a closed back headphone, they're very, very impressive. I like these a lot. They're not really giving me a substantial open back sound, but in terms of the technicality between the quality and the detail retrieval and the soundstage that is given, the imaging is fantastic, but more the tonal balance is the really impressive part about this headphone. And for being closed back, it's a pretty nice little headphone here. But we're gonna go ahead and discuss, like always, the treble, mid-range, and bass response, starting, I guess, with the treble. So the T50 mods can really get into a level of treble where you're dealing with what I would consider to be kind of an annoyingly present treble, to where, you know, either it's overly done, like with the Talus, where it's just way too bright, or, you know, with the classics, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a little bit annoying, because it is crisp and all that fun stuff, but it's too much. And for this, it was kind of just the right amount of crispness and evenness to the treble performance without it being too bright, but you never really felt like it was lacking any detail. That's exactly what I would expect out of a clinical headphone like this one, regarding the treble at least. Now, the mid-range for technicality is also very good. So, you know, strings are sweet and definitely have texture to them. Drums from a band called Kodo, that's K-O-D-O. I highly recommend checking them out if you really like deep, rumbling, kind of large soundstagey drums. They're an amazing band for that. And on this, they develop with a really substantial amount of body, great detail, really fast and solid impact. And between the mid-range body that this provides and the not overly done bass, it really makes for a clean yet powerful sound for something like drums. Guitar is also very nice, although I do think that maybe for strings I've perhaps heard a little bit better, like with the EL8 closed back headphones. I think the strings were definitely better performers there, but I'd really have to hear them back to back to really determine that. But I think from memory, I think the string performance is a lot better on the EL8 than it is on this, but it's also not disappointing on this either. Now for vocals, this has good but not spectacular performance, and admittedly I am a little bit, you know, lucky to have heard some really spectacular headphones that admittedly are open back, but I've really been spoiled in the vocal areas. So, you know, when something like this, yes, I have to calculate for the fact that it's closed, but it's also not really something that stands out to me as being particularly good. Although it is also worth noting that I really haven't heard a closed back headphone that has particularly good vocals, and that's might not be something to fault this specific headphone for, and maybe just closed backs as a whole, at least in my experience. You know, as time goes on, I'll try more closed backs and we'll see if that changes. But vocals for this are nothing to really write home about, although they're not poor either. Like, they weren't completely sucked out or devoid of any quality to them. Just at the $700 price tag, they didn't really scream out to me, you know? Now, because of the sort of the mid-bass response, vocalists like the White Buffalo that have really meaty and really full sound, this does fill out very, very nicely. It's more when you get into the angelic singing of somebody like Adele, Jackie Evancho, Amber Rubarth, somebody with higher pitched vocals, even more common modern artists like The Weeknd or Ed Sheeran, where they're just a little bit higher pitch. This tends to fall a little bit flat in terms of an angelic singing experience. Now, you may not like that sort of super forward sound signature for the vocalist that I actually tend to like 6XXs are still one of my favorite headphones for vocals just because of that forward vocal performance. But on this headphone, you're not really getting an extremely forward mid-range vocal performance. So bass response. If I were to describe the bass response to this headphone in one word, I would call it clean. You know, it hits 20-30 hertz no problem, but it's also not as forward as something like some of the larger planars like an LCD2C, which is also in this price range. And overall, I'm not disappointed with the bass response, and I definitely see that they were going for a more neutral sound, but if I'm going to go off my personal preference, I think they could have gotten away with a little bit more, not completely overdone, but just a little bit more in terms of the bass response, and I would have been very, very happy with it. So imaging and soundstage. Imaging is very tight, positionally very accurate, but the soundstage lacks a lot of depth and is not, it doesn't really have an extreme amount of width, which is, I guess, to be expected from a closed back headphone. Again, you know, I do review a lot of open back headphones, but to me, they just sound a lot more natural. But they did do pretty good in the closed back realm. So if you're in the market for a closed back, it is pretty good. I think comparing it to other headphones at the price point, regardless of closed, semi-open, or open, I think there are a lot better options at the $700 price and even below. For a closed back headphone, I think they achieve a very natural sound. In fact, this might even be the most neutral closed back headphone I've tried. I'd have to try the EL8s, but I don't remember them being particularly neutral, but I'd have to try them back to back. But this is up there in terms of what I have tried for closed backs. So I am going to leave it there. And upcoming, there will be a review of a headphone that I really, really like, which is the Oris from ZMF. Either way, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, patrons, for the continuing support. Thank you very much to the anonymous individual who sent these out for a review. I definitely appreciate it. And until the next video, guys, my name's Josh, signing off.